what does it take to nurture amazing work cultures and high-performance teams when rapidly scaling tech startups? Well, today I've got Francis Lacoste, an engineering leadership coach who has dedicated his career to helping CTOs and VPs of engineering thrive in their roles. And he's got a wealth of experience, including recent role as Senior Director of Software Engineering Culture and Engagement at Salesforce. And he has a unique perspective on building collaborative and innovative environments. So today we'll dive into the importance of the inner game for tech leaders, the critical impact of maintaining a strong culture during rapid scaling, and how psychological safety and mutual accountability are key pillars for high-performing teams. And hopefully he'll also share a few best tips for staying effective and making an impact at every stage of being a startup CTO or VPE. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Montreal, where we'll explore the journey of a tech leader who is passionate about fostering innovation and growth throughout the tech community and beyond. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Francis. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm Francis Lacoste. I live in Montreal in the province of Quebec in Canada. And I'm now a professional executive coach. I work with CTOs and VP of engineering at startups when it's time to scale, and I help them to scale with their organization.
Well, a big welcome to the podcast. And one of the reasons I was excited to get you on is, one, you listened to the show before, so I know you know kind of what to expect. And you should also know that I'm always intrigued and fascinated by my guest's origin story. So to begin with, can you tell me a little bit about your journey from leading engineering teams at companies such as Salesforce, Heroku, and Canokio to becoming an engineering leadership coach? There's got to be a story there, right?
Yes, and the story starts. So my background is as a software engineer. Actually, I started in the open source, so was doing open source development, and that eventually led me to Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu. And then I joined there as software engineer, and after a few years, got invited to become an engineering manager, and I didn't know at all what I was getting into. I just said yes, and then realized, okay, this is totally a different job. This has nothing to do with programming. But my background, actually, I never studied computer science. I'm a self-learner. I learned through working in the free software community. But my major was in sociology. So when I became a manager, it was kind of, this is a social system that I'm working with. And so all my love of social systems kind of came back, and then did that for a number of years. Eventually moved to Heroku to help build the remote culture there. And after a few years in, there was a reorg, and I ended up again with a single team, which was not a challenge anymore. But there was a guy on the team who wanted to become an engineering manager. So I said, "Oh, great! You're already running most of the ceremonies. I'm going to mentor you." And because that's what I loved about the director role. It was about helping bring about the next generation of leaders. And we had a lot of first-time engineering managers at Heroku. So I with some more bandwidth, I said, okay, I opened it up and said, hey, I have time. If anybody is interested in mentoring, coaching for engineering managers, hit me up. And a lot of people took me up on that offer. So I ended up mentoring and coaching a lot of the managers there, and started to study, okay, coaching, that's actually a real discipline. So started reading and studying that. And then, this is different than just mentoring. And that continued to happen in parallel as I ended up leading the largest engineering department again at Heroku. And that was about 5 years ago. And that's when I realized actually the engineering leadership path is not fulfilling to me anymore. And this coaching that I've been doing, and this is what interests me, helping build a culture and build the leaders who build that culture. So I kind of knew that eventually I'll be where I'm at today, kind of as a consultant, independent consultant. But spoke with my VP and was able to, they created a role for me. So I ended up chief of staff, which was more aligned where what I wanted to do. And then after another reorg, I ended up like running engineering culture programs for all of Salesforce platform. So that's how, and I mean, that lasted, the pandemic hit during that transition. So lots of my expertise was very welcome and appreciated. And then in 2022, we could see the contractions coming. And so then there was less interest in culture. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's time to make the move. And that happened in 2022. So yeah, and here I am.
Wow,
that's kind of the story.
What a great story. And when I was researching you, one of the things I came across was you emphasize the importance of the inner game, especially for CTOs and VPs of engineering at scaling startups. So can you explain what the inner game entails and why you think it's crucial for tech leaders?
Yeah, so the inner game is, especially as in tech and leaders, we're very focused on, outward behaviors, or what are the things we should be doing, or the process to create, and all of these outward these actions are good, but for them to be inspired and effective, there's kind of an inner dimension to it. So the inner game is our own. I have colleagues who call this like self as instrument, so it's our own interior objectives, our mindsets, our attitudes, our beliefs, and that is what generates our action. So the inner game is about self-awareness, emotional management, emotional mastery, mindsets, and that's super crucial because especially when you're a leader, this is often like a very lonely position. You don't have necessarily a lot of peers, or even the CTO will usually their manager will be the CEO, but you have very little mentoring and happening. So you need to cultivate these inner resources.
And just to interrupt you there, one of the things that I hear time and time again on this show is that when scaling a team quickly, it's culture that's often overlooked, possibly one of the most important areas. So what are some of the strategies that you would ensure that, or suggest that would ensure a positive collaborative culture is maintained during rapid growth? Because it's missed so many times, isn't it?
Yeah, this is crucial. I often say one challenge with scaling rapidly is that, rapidly the startup might have existed for a couple of years with very few people, 10 people who've kind of grown with the culture and the startup. And then you often get like, now you're ready to scale and you hire massive. And so the size of the team will double in less than a year. So you go from 10 to 20 or even more, like from 6 to 18 months. And which means that at that point, you have more people coming from outside than people from outside. So if you don't have a strong culture and a strong onboarding process, and then everybody, especially in a startup, there's so much to do, and there's everything to build. Then everybody comes, this is how we do it at my last company or that other company. And then you can up with something which is kind of a very hodgepodge, it's kind of not, because how they did it at their previous company doesn't mean that is the right thing for this company. So to mitigate that, this is when you're ready to scale, you really need to have a strong culture. And by that, it means, having clarity around what is it that you're doing, or why, and more importantly, why you're doing it and how you're doing it. So the values. And if that's clear, then this is the onboarding aspect. So, of course, if you have that, this is in the hiring process itself, it needs to be manifested. You need to select the people who resonate with that culture. But if you don't have a clear culture, a clear idea, then you cannot use that as a filter in your hiring process. And even then, once they come in, it needs to be reinforced. And people need to be onboarded into this vision, how things are done, that sort of thing. And then that
these control principles you need to be enacted in everything that the company does, so that it's kind of continually reinforced. This is often why it's called kind of in how you hire, how you promote, how you fire, performance management, and also more than that, in how you actually work. So this is why it's crucial.
Yeah, it really is. And another area, of course, is psychological safety and mutual accountability, key pillars of high-performance teams. But how can leaders foster these elements within their teams, especially in remote or hybrid working environments where people are very often onboarded and enter the workplace and they work alongside teams without meeting them physically? It can be quite challenging too, can't it?
Very much so, yes. So fun fact here, I've always worked remotely. I've been working remotely for almost 25 years now. I learned to the management at Canonical, which was a remote first company. This was back in 2008, way before the pandemic. And I think this is one of the double edge of the pandemic, for in regards to remote work. So it kind of showed the world that, we can work remotely. But I think it gave a very skewed view of what remote work actually is. Before, and because like you said, now it's common for people to be onboarded without meeting physically their colleagues, and which is not how it was done previously for companies that at Heroku and Sales and Canonical, we would, when people came in, we would try to get them to align their first day with, or if it was not their first day, within their first month at the very least, with a team offsite. So team would meet, we work remotely most of the year, but the teams would meet together between, at least one, ideally 2, sometimes 4 times a year. And these periods are just kind of accelerate the building of psychological safety and getting people to be comfortable with each other. One anecdote that illustrates that is so I was working remotely with my team at Canonical, and and at that time tools were not what they were today. So we didn't have group calls. It was one-on-one on Skype and text messages on RC, which is kind of very what came way before Slack and Teams and these types of instant messaging. And so most of our communication were text-based using RC. And whenever we would meet, for a couple of weeks after I was back at home, I would hear the message that I was reading in the voice of the person I had just met. This is how it kind of created that. So that's kind of for the context. But then the how to cultivate that. In a way, getting people together helps, but you can actually be more deliberate. And that kind of accelerates the building of psychological safety. Because psychological safety is a technical term, which is around the perception that the team is safe for interpersonal risk. So another way, back in the days, Patrick Lencioni was calling, this is the first function of a team, a sense of trust. And trust here was, he defined it as vulnerability-based trust. So it's kind of feeling that I can be vulnerable in this environment. People are not going to use that against me or take advantage of my vulnerability. So in a way, there are exercises you can do in person, but you can also do that remotely if you can't do that in person, where you cultivate this. In a way, it's not I was going to say cultivate vulnerability, but that's not what it is. It's kind of you invite people in vulnerability, and so an example of this exercise was from also Patrick Lencioni, which was sharing of personal histories in a way. So kind of answering everybody answers a question like, okay, where did I grow up? And a challenge I experienced as growing up. Everybody has experienced challenges growing up. It doesn't need to be traumatic.
And you mentioned challenges there. I'm curious, based on your experience and everything that you've come across in your career, what are some of those common challenges that CTOs and VPs of engineering face when scaling their startups, and how can they overcome some of these obstacles? Are there any trends in the kind of challenges that you see?
I mean, there are common patterns, So a common one is actually what we discussed earlier around a lack of clarity around the cultural vision. This is a common challenge. It's kind of there's no clear idea of why they're doing this and what are their organization values, that sort of thing. Or when there is, it's either aspirational or it's just written down. It's not enacted. So it's kind of, yes, you have values, but how are these really enacted in or hiring, in all the way you work? Other challenges are related to the common challenges are related to the inner game. And so a common one is, what I call it like the need to befriend uncertainty. There's no guarantee. You're in a startup and, there's no guarantee that things are going to work out or things like that. Or so there's kind of some resilience that needs to be developed with that fact of life, especially in that environment. Another very common one is issues around accountability, having performance and performance management. So, hey, I'm kind of unsatisfied with that person on the team and they're not meeting expectation. And I don't know how often I will ask, well, this is a common question. Well, do they know about your expectation? Have you communicated to them, And, oh, yes, maybe that type of basic leadership aspect. Because, I mean, I work a lot with many of them are not seasoned leaders, so they maybe manage, often they're technical co-founders. They grew up with the organization, maybe manage a small teams, but beyond that, this might not be their expertise. So that's why I'm there to help them cultivate these skills.
Love that. And you've also helped grow and build a culture of collaboration and indeed innovation at large organizations such as Salesforce. So are there any best practices for maintaining and nurturing values like this in a fast growing startup? There's a lot of startups and businesses alike that try to do the right thing. They want to encourage innovation, but they go about it all the wrong way. So I'm curious what you're seeing here as well, and the better ways to build a culture of collaboration and innovation.
You cannot dictate innovation. So this is the one thing that's really important is to, we've talked about that, the psychological safety. So we hire smart people. Everybody hires the best. But then if you hire the best, then you need to let them work. Or you need to give them space. So if you have this is like the idea of the clarity of the mission, of why we're here, what we're doing, and how we're doing it. And then you create you create this culture of psychological safety so that people feel confident and comfort and working with one another. Then things then innovation and collaboration can happen. But often what I've seen is kind of trying to over-prescribe how things needs to be done or tell people what to do. I mean, sometimes can go to micromanagement. So these are hindrances. So in a way, you need to get out of the way also. This is also another common challenges with CTOs, particularly. Especially when they have been very hands-on. So they're the unknowingly or not consciously, they still want to remain at the center of every decision making, which puts everyone in shackles because it's kind of nobody has the autonomy to actually innovate because this innovation needs to be validated or integrated by the leader. So there's a kind of a stepping out that needs to happen so that the space for collaboration and innovation happen. So you don't want to be totally out. You need to remain, but in relationship, engage. But usually it's much less prescriptive than people think.
It's not as simple as foosball tables and multicolored beanbags and hey, you're creative now. Go and innovate in that space.
No,
if only it was,
no.
Right?
And the other thing I would say, and this is something I really appreciated from Salesforce, is that living the values. I mean, at Salesforce, the values were not just on the wall and the poster. I mean, decisions were taken based on the values. So that also helps to reinforce that throughout the culture. I think if there's I'm kind of wary of best practices, because best practices, what's missing is in which context. But if there is a best practice here, it's about like, well, if you have values, you really need to live them. Otherwise, it's just a poster, and usually that a poster that feeds cynicism.
Well, although we can't talk about best practices, for any listener that's listening anywhere in the world, that maybe they're looking for that valuable takeaway, something that will help them, are there any top tips for any CTOs or VPs of engineering that you could offer that would help them stay effective and make that significant impact at every stage of their startup's growth? Any tips that spring to mind there?
I mean, trust your people. That would be one. And then I've already said that numerous times, so I'll say it again because it's very important. Really get clarity around what is it that the organization is doing and how it's doing it. Clarity is essential, really, for any success, because often it's not clear. So then we don't know. I mean, if the objectives are not clear, or then people cannot really engage in a productive manner.
And I think also for people listening around the world, I think we all unitedly feel the same, and this pressure of having to be in a state of continuous learning all the time to keep up to speed with the pace of technological change. So I've got to ask, as someone that's a techie at heart, but you're moving in different circles now, how or where do you self-educate? Are you still passionate about this? And what do you do to keep up to speed?
Oh, yes. I mean, I'm a big podcast and audiobook listener. I mean, I was a book reader a long time ago when I had a commute, so that tells you how long it was. And then when commute stopped, it took me a while to find how can I cram as much reading. And this is where I discovered audiobooks and podcasts. And even, so whenever I'm at, in the car, at the gym or walking, I'll probably be I'm very likely listening to an audiobook or a podcast, and built up my, over time, there's a 1x, 2x. so to maximize the information, so that it's faster, get more through less time. But the other thing which goes with it, I think, and this is more important in a way, is the reflection time. So I kind of listen to these podcasts and these books, but then we'll take time to kind of make notes of what I want to remember and how to apply it. So life is throwing us a lot of is a great teacher, because we have a lot of experience. And sometimes it's not so much about reading and absorbing information, but reflecting on what is happening. And when we read, we need to reflect also on what we read. Otherwise, we're just collecting more data, but not really integrating it in learning.
Well, we started the podcast talking about your origin story. And as we almost come full circle now, I'm going to ask you to look back at your career, because none of us are able to achieve any degree of success without a little help along the way. So is there a particular person that you're grateful towards who maybe helped you get where you are, or just saw something in you and maybe even just invested a little time in you? Who would that person be? We'll give them a little shout out today.
I mean, there are many people that contributed. You're right. I mean, nobody does this alone. I'm thinking of my colleague Steve, who hired me at Canonical, and then
provide mentoring. One, he offered me to become, I had two managers there, Steve and Kiko. Both were awesome in doing the necessary mentoring to make that transition. But really, I think the person whom I'm most grateful to is my wife. I mean, we've been together since high school, really. And, I learned a lot from her, especially around, social skills. She's greatly empathetic and compassionate. And, I'm especially young. I was more, inward looking and not very social and kind of a jerk, really. So she really made me mellow out and open up, and would not be doing what I'm doing here for her.
Oh, absolutely love it. What a great answer. And for anyone listening, maybe they just want to find out a little bit more information about what you do, how you help businesses as a VPE coach, and anything in between. Maybe they want to connect with you or ask you or your team a question. Where would you like to point everyone listening?
So they can go to my website, thevpe.coach, or find me on LinkedIn, Francis Lacoste on LinkedIn. Love to connect with people there, and always open for a chat as well.
Well, first of all, we'll give a big shout out to Steve and your wife for helping you on this journey. And a big thank you for taking the time to sit down and share your story with me today. And we did cover a lot there, from the importance of the inner game for CTOs and VPEs at scaling startups, the critical impact of culture when attempting to scale a team fast, and also the importance of psychological safety, mutual accountability as the pillars of a high-performing team. We often get distracted by the technology side of things and forget the most important element, which, of course, is the people. And also, a big thank you for sharing your best tips to stay effective and make an impact at every stage of being a startup CTO or VPE. Pure gold from my side, but just thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's a pleasure.
And that wraps up our insightful conversation with Francis today, who is now my go-to guy in Montreal. And I think his expertise in engineering leadership and his dedication to nurturing high-performing teams have provided us today with this valuable lesson, with a series of valuable lessons on building and maintaining strong work cultures in tech startups. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's discussion. What stood out to you about the importance of that inner game or the role of psychological safety in teams? Share your insights and join the conversation by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just @NeilC.Hughes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But please stay curious, stay innovative, and keep fostering those amazing work cultures. But more than anything, just thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.